Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how I make my high protein veggie burgers. Alright, the first thing you're going to need is a medium to large onion. I'm using a sweet onion, you can use whatever onion you like. And we're just going to roughly chop this up and put it in a skillet and cook it until it is translucent, maybe a little caramelized. And we're adding a tablespoon of avocado oil to the pan. That is the only oil we're going to be adding to this recipe. If you would prefer not to use it, you don't have to. You could just water saute the onions. Okay, we added our onion and we're just going to let that cook. You can add a pinch of salt to help the onions sweat out more of their moisture. All right, now we're going to move into our next step. So I'm going to make a flax egg. I have a tablespoon of ground flax here. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of water. Then we're going to set that aside and let it gel up. This is one of the binders in this recipe. Now we're going to get to work on our honkin' sweet potato. So this is a very large sweet potato. You need either two small sweet potatoes or 1 large sweet potato for this recipe. There's a couple ways you could prepare the sweet potato. You could steam it in the microwave or bake it, roast it in the oven. What I'm going to do today is I just chopped off the ends. I'm going to peel the sweet potato, I'm going to cube it up, and I'm going to pop it in the air fryer. I'm not going to season it or anything. It doesn't really need to be seasoned. It's just going to be pureed basically and then mixed into our veggie burger. And make sure you check on your onions periodically. Like I said, we're just trying to get a little bit of color on them. Sweat them out. Okay, so after I've peeled my sweet potato, it's 483 grams if that matters to you guys. I'm looking for about 450. It's a little over. It's okay. All right, so I just cut up roughly the sweet potato, and we're going to cook it 425, starting at 15 minutes. All right, these onions are looking perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. They're a little translucent. They're charring. It's going to add a lot of flavor to our burger. Now, before I take these off the heat, I'm going to crush in 4 small cloves of garlic, or like 2 bigger regular sized cloves of garlic. And we're just going to stir that in, and we're going to go ahead and turn the heat off because we don't want our garlic to burn. We just want it to cook a little bit with the onions. Then we turn the heat off, and after a couple minutes, we're going to add this right to our food processor. All right, and that is what we're looking for. So we're going to let this chill out until our sweet potatoes are done, and then we're going to add our sweet potatoes into this as well, and we're going to blend it all up till it's like pretty fine. I wouldn't say mush, but you don't want big chunks either. In the meantime, we're going to drain and rinse 2 cans of black beans. All right, now we're just gonna let these black beans hang out and just drain and get as dry as possible before we add them to our mixture. Now we're gonna get started on our quinoa. So I'm using a 1/2 cup dried. It should give us about 1.5 cups of cooked quinoa. So I'm just gonna rinse that, and then I'm gonna add it to my rice cooker. All right, so we went ahead and put our 1/2 cup of quinoa in here that we rinsed. So I have a 3/4 cup of water that we need to put in here, but I'm going to be adding this Better Than Bouillon Smoky Chipotle because I'm kind of going for like a Southwest style theme for these burgers. Like even the seasoning that we're going to use later is my homemade taco seasoning. Using that teaspoon with the water into the quinoa is going to add a lot of flavor. And we might actually use more of this later, but for right now, we're just going to add a teaspoon in to cook with the quinoa. All right, we're going to pour that on in there. And then we're going to close our rice cooker. And I like to cook this just on the white rice setting, and it cooks just fine. All right, now we're going to start measuring out the other liquid ingredients that we're going to be needing for this. So I'm going to be using 2 tablespoons of black vinegar. If you don't have this, that's okay. Just use like soy sauce. It won't be exactly the same, but I find that they both taste good. Then we're going to add a tablespoon of liquid aminos. Again, if you don't have this, you can use soy sauce. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a very similar profile in my opinion to the flavor, especially for the liquid aminos. We're going to add a 1/2 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now most of these things you can get on Amazon. That's usually where I get them. But you can find vegan Worcestershire sauce in a lot of places now. I actually really like this brand. This one was like one of my favorites so far that I've tried. And now we're gonna add a half a teaspoon of liquid smoke. You could add a whole teaspoon if you want to. Just keep in mind it is a very smoky flavor, and I plan on grilling these burgers anyway, so yeah, keep that in mind. And as you can see, we've got about 75 milliliters of liquid that we're gonna add in. Now we're gonna add water to this until it's up to the half a cup line. Perfect. So yeah, we're gonna be adding TVP and Vital Wheat gluten to this recipe. So we're gonna wanna add some liquid in, especially some liquid that has some flavor. That's why we've got this half a cup measured out of liquids. All right, and I just checked on the sweet potatoes and they were not done yet. The 15 minutes that we put them in for was up. So I'm cooking them for an additional 15 minutes. And honestly, like the browning is totally fine. That's actually gonna add more flavor. But like I said, if you don't want that, you can just steam these. But I'm trying to get more liquid out because I wanna add in flavor. So I'm trying to get rid of the liquid that doesn't really have as much flavor. All right, it looks like our sweet potato is done. It's hot, so be careful, but it should be like slightly squishy. We're gonna go ahead and add this to our food processor also. Now we're gonna go ahead and pulse this together. All right, and this is what we're looking for. As you can see, there's still some larger chunks. It is wet and mushy, but that's okay because we're gonna be adding things in here that are gonna absorb that moisture. But now that we got our vegetables taken care of, we're gonna add in our black beans and we're going to pulse them together. We don't want it to become like refried beans. We still wanna have some texture of the beans, but we are going to mush it up a little bit. And at this stage, we can go ahead and start adding in some of the seasoning. So I'm using my homemade taco seasoning. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of that into this before I blend it up. All right, let's give it a go. And that is looking pretty good. Now that flax egg that we made earlier and set aside, we're going to add that in now. And it should be nice and thick. All right, we're gonna pulse it together some more. Alright guys, and that is looking pretty good. At this point we're gonna stop. Once our quinoa is done, then we're gonna fold that in here, but we can take the blade out. You can either mix the rest, all of it in the food processor to save you a dish, or you can dump this into a bowl, it doesn't matter. Alright, our quinoa is done. Now we're gonna combine it with the rest of our mixture. Alright, I went ahead and put this in a bowl so you guys could see better what I'm gonna do. So I'm going to fold in the quinoa into the mixture until it's well incorporated. Now the cool thing about this recipe is you could stop right here and just make sweet potato, black bean quinoa burgers. You could patty these up, pop them in the freezer, and meal prep them. You could bake them in the oven. That's how I would recommend doing them if you're gonna leave them at this stage, because they will be a bit crumbly. But we're going to take this to the next level by making it a higher protein thing. So first we're going to add 1.5 cups of TVP. We're going to go ahead and mix that in there. And this is dry TVP that I'm using because we have a very wet mixture. We don't want to add wet TVP to it. We want the TVP to help soak up the moisture. We're going to add 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. Go ahead and mix that in. Now we're going to add in 2 cups of Vital Wheat gluten. This is primarily where the protein is coming from. Obviously there's a little bit here and there in most of the ingredients, but to make this a higher protein veggie burger, we're adding Vital Wheat gluten. Now you can try mixing this in with your rubber spatula or whatever you would like. Eventually, you're gonna have to get your hands dirty. Now, you could also mix this in a stand mixer. either or, but we're basically going to incorporate this the best we can. Then we're going to add in our liquid seasoning that we measured out earlier. All right, now we're going to add in our liquid ingredients. Remember, we had a half a cup of liquid reserved. Going to go ahead and add that in and mix it together. So right now what I'm doing is I'm kneading all of this together until basically there is no more dry Vital Wheat gluten. All right, you guys, and now we're left with this big old dough ball. And as you can see all those gluten strands pulling, which is what we want. We want that meaty texture. We want the burgers to be able to hold their own if you decide to grill these bad boys. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna let it rest for about 15 minutes, and then we're gonna separate it into patties. All right, now that our dough has rested, our burger dough, we're going to portion it out into patties. So basically, I'm taking a half cup measure and I'm packing it as full as I can with our mixture, and then I just patty it with my hands. All right, now these are big patties. Like, they're the size of the palm of my hand. So if you were looking for a smaller burger, you could actually just do half of the size instead of using a half a cup packed as tight as you can get it in there. You could do a fourth a cup if you want it to be less. So now what we have to do is we have to decide how we're going to cook these. So what I like to do is I like to grill these or fry them in a pan. You can bake them, but we're going to steam them first. So you can use an Instant Pot for that. You can do what I'm going to do and just use a steamer basket on one of my pots. All right, now I've got my pot on the burner. I'm gonna turn it on high. This is my little steamer basket. So I'm going to put parchment paper in here. I'm gonna cut it to fit. And then I'm just gonna use a chopstick or whatever you have that's small enough for the holes and just poke little holes in it so that the steam can still get through. But the parchment paper will help it from sticking. All right, and these guys are ready to go in. I did go ahead and cut the burgers in half. Because typically I don't have them that large, but this makes either 8 large patties or 16 smaller patties, and these are way more manageable. So, but we are going to cook these up now. My water is boiling, so we're just gonna pop it on top of our pot and cover it with a lid, and then we're gonna let that cook for 10 minutes. All right, and after 10 minutes in the steamer, this is what they're looking like. Bouncy. Obviously, don't ever just like touch it like this. It's hot as heck in there, but they're nice and bouncy and firm. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna remove those from the steamer, put them on either another silicone mat or parchment paper if you don't have a silicone mat, and let them cool off, and then keep on repeating the process until we've cooked up all of the burgers. The only thing you're going to want to look out for as you keep on going with this is you want to make sure that you don't run out of water in your pot. Otherwise, it's going to burn on the bottom and it's not going to be very fun to clean. Could put you in danger, you know, and it's going to ruin your burgers. So keep an eye on that. I would say check it after each batch just to be safe. All right, so once all your patties are cooked, and you'll notice as they're cooling, they get firmer almost and not as squidgy, and that's good. So basically what you're going to want to do is you want to put these in the fridge or the freezer, and you want to keep them in there until you're ready to grill them up or fry them in a pan or bake them in the oven. The cooling process of the gluten actually helps the texture immensely. So you want to make sure you do that. If you plan on making this and like grilling out right away, give yourself an hour at least to let these set in the fridge before you do. So the only things that I really pay attention to, because I work out and like trying to build muscle and stuff, I pay attention to the calories, I pay attention to the protein, the fiber, and the fat. So each one of these, if you're doing the 16 burgers, the 16 smaller burgers, each one of these is 195 calories, 20 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, and 3 grams of fat. And that is crazy. And you might notice that I didn't add a whole lot of seasoning to these. Now, personally, I don't think they need it. I like to add like onion rings or barbecue sauce and cheese to my burgers. But if, you think it needs more seasoning, when you're cooking it, just add some more, like salt or pepper or whatever seasonings you like to put on your burger when you cook them. These I think are great as they are. If I was using like a store-bought, plant-based, vegan meat alternative, I would usually season it. But I think these don't really need very much at all. But I will be back and show you guys what it looks like when I have cooked it, maybe while I'm cooking it, and then the finished product. Hey guys, I just took a bite out of this ridiculous burger I made, and it's so good. So the patty is like soft, but not too soft. It's got a more meaty texture. Like I can feel that there's black beans in it, but overall it just feels like a really good veggie burger, but it's high protein. And the Southwest flavors really come through in this burger, but if the Southwest flavors aren't your vibe, you could season this really however you want when you're making the mixture. That's just my go-to, my preferred. So I hope you guys give this one a try. Enjoy.